I hope that we can sort of have a sort of preliminary discussion. How many folks knew that there was a Black Lives Matter and quote-unquote convening that was happening this weekend? And this is good. Actually, this is very good, because probably more people in this room knew that this was happening than the people of Cleveland. And this is really important, that there was not, I talked to activists in Cleveland, and they were probably one of the smallest percentages of folks who came. There were folks that flew in from Germany and from England. A bus drove in from LA. Like that was, I was just like, what? A bus drove in from LA. Plus, countless people like flew from all over the country. Durham, Tennessee, all over Ohio itself. There were people from, all over the Midwest. And of course, New York had a bus from Harlem and a bus from Brooklyn with tons of people who drove on their own and flew on their own. But folks remarked that until almost a week before, most of the Cleveland movement was like, what? Besides folks that were actually working on it. And that just is that, it's not to say that you were in the Black Lives Matter movement in Cleveland, you probably knew that it was happening. If you were part of the general public of this black city, you probably did not know, besides of being on the right listservs, because there was sort of a media silence, and people talked about why aren't people in this city full of black folks, where the home of the murder of Tamir Rice is not this outpouring of folks from Cleveland. What was great was, and I think the moment that before we got there, the night before, there was a Tamir Rice demonstration that happened where people did like march downtown, and of course they've been fiercely active around his case. The convening, and I think this is just important, this is the 2-year anniversary of the Black Lives Matter movement. Even though a lot of us really see Ferguson, 2014 August, as the time, they themselves inside Black Lives Matter see and started to celebrate, this is July, beginning of July, late June, they started celebrating their 2 years, and there were like different internal meetings. So if folks just understand, and if I'm going too fast, please let me know. If folks understand, Black Lives Matter is a political movement, but it's also an organization with chapters all over the country, particularly here in New York and California, particularly LA, that people that self-identify as being part of that organization. And that started in 2013, primarily around Trayvon Martin, when the Zimmerman verdict came down. The coining of the phrase Black Lives Matter and the understanding of an organization was by 3 women, who 2 of which are queer-identified women, and one heterosexual woman, but more importantly, the understanding that this is and has been a woman-led, LGBT-led movement, and the vast majority of folks that are inside their chapters a lot of times are LGBT-identified and woman-identified. And really wanting to coin the phrase, and really actually, and badassly, policing Black Lives Matter in the sense of that people that use that hashtag really think about, are you thinking that all Black lives matter? So that they have coined, and from the very beginning, had days of action around Black trans women being murdered, both by the police, but just in general, that there is the green light that trans women are murdered at an alarming rate, that already we're just about to hit August 1st, and there's already been 11 murders of trans women. This is like, if we were thinking once a month, we've done that. We're at twice. We're at the half year, and 2 Black trans women are being killed in the United States at alarming rates. So they have already started to coin that phrase, have Black trans women in their leadership, and really look at of all Black Lives Matter is sort of their understanding. So with all of this said, and I'll just talk very anecdotally, because I would say, outside of being part of Workers' World Party and enjoying myself as a comrade for the last 20-something years of my life, and other sort of amazing political moments that we've had in the movement, I would say that this convening was probably one of the best movement experiences I've ever had in my life, for a host of reasons. That it was, first and foremost, a space that was largely black identified. It was black identified people with, on occasion, and particularly welcoming of Latino identified folks that particularly coming from the more African, from a more African tradition. So definitely there were activists that came from the Dominican Republic. They actually came on the Harlem bus. Two black women from DR came on the Harlem bus. There were probably other folks that also internationally sort of represented Africa and that were Spanish-speaking, Latino identified. Black-Tina identity was very much, of course, part of this, and lots of folks were part of that. This was like some of the highlights of this was anything from with the Chekwe, Lumumba, Malcolm X grassroots, People's Assembly movement, doing what I believe was one of the biggest workshops, and people really looking at that whole legacy of creating people's power inside the United States through this assembly process. To the COINTELPRO panel that was Ramona Africa, Eddie Conway, I forget who else, with like sort of the celebrity that was that. I'm not going to lie to you. I did not participate in the conference. And I'll just share why. I had the great fortune while I was a bus captain for the New York bus. I'll talk about that in a minute. That was kind of in Brooklyn. That was a whole other thing. That was kind of amazing. But I had the opportunity, and again, in the spirit of being revolutionary, that there was a freedom school. In the spirit of Ella Baker and the understanding of a freedom school, I got to be a teacher in the freedom school for the 3 weekends. And for the weekend. And it's so funny too, because everyone talks about the conference like we've been there for a week. Everyone's like, all week long, and we're like, it was only 3 days, all week long. But not so much that it was like that it was, it seemed long, it just was liberated space and territory where people really felt like it didn't matter if people were at the conference or not. When you saw black people walking down the street, you said, hello, my peoples, hello, brother, hello, sister, like throughout Cleveland. Like people just did that. And it became a ritual of folks just doing that and having that sense of like, this is our space. It was 1,200 people that attended that conference. So it really was like an outpouring of like black revolutionary left sort of understanding of, and with, again, being LGBT-led, women of color-led, black women-led. I think some other things I just want to share about the conference, and so my opportunity to be in the Freedom School, which is like 2-month-old to 13, 15-year-old, and I'll just share just like, that there were moments that we asked young people about their experiences around police brutality and being able to talk about that. And so young people that were from Ferguson, I still have some of like their paintings and drawings, drew Mike Brown, and got to talk about what that was like for them as being young people that come from St. Louis or Ferguson. And these were, graphic pictures about what that means to live, that young people drew pictures of their own experiences with their own families and what it was, what the police do in their own communities. And at the same time, then we're chanting and jumping it down, I believe that we can win. That folks are I could go on and on about every Freedom School song that I learned, from just amazing ways for young people then to sort of have a lot of sense of empowerment and understanding that they were part of this movement too, that they that wasn't just in some isolated vacuum, that how we treat children, like they're not supposed to know and they're not part of an empowered part of our community, but they themselves were leaders, and that, as they call them, scholars in the Freedom School. And just to have that opportunity was amazing for me, particularly as someone who works in social services, to have what revolutionary, childcare looks like. Last but not least, I guess I'll talk about like the main pieces that kind of happened were some bad things happened, and I think I should just go into some of this. Oh no, let me talk about one really good thing. So the very opening panel that I did not get to go to because I was at the Freedom School, and it was sold out, and not for money, but just like it was. We were at the Cleveland State University, standing room only. extra room was all the families around police brutality. So Mike Brown's mother, Trayvon Martin's mother and father, I believe. Also, I'm not quite sure. I think Eric Gardner's. I'm trying to think about the different cities. Oscar Grant's family that were all on stage together. Very heavy, very, very, very heavy. Very people talked about, again, why people talked about it being a week. Just the opening was like, wow, to have these folks there with everyone. And then after that moment, and if you go online and you see the videotape, are people then chanting Black Lives Matter to the hilt, standing raised up, yelling for probably a good 10 to 15 minutes, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. And in this incredibly powerful way that, again, this was just the natural outpouring of how people felt in people's expression and being able to say that, and really, truthfully, with these families present. That evening, a situation happened that I thought was kind of badass. And it's something that I think, and I want to also say this, one of the things that was really important about this conference was, no matter how great and amazing people may, be or try to be, chances are someone's going to screw up. You might forget something politically. We've all been there. We're just not perfect. What was badass about this conference was stuff like that happened, and people owned their mistakes. So particularly around trans stuff, a couple things happened, and they quickly kind of mobilized. They had trans leadership from Cleveland. They kind of got all this together, but they didn't realize that they still had gendered the bathrooms. And it was kind of so what happened was, and why this even came to being, was that we had a party that was designated in Cleveland in a nightclub. It was all very well organized. In fact, the DJ Reborn, who I love, one of my favorite DJs, a Sister Robin, who DJ'd. So it was not that we just went to some nightclub and they played any old music. This was music. This was great. It was amazing. And there was a trans person, male-identified, masculine-identified person, who was then approached by, who went to use the bathroom, particularly the women's bathroom, and was stopped by security, and not only stopped by security, was ushered out of the nightclub. And I was standing by the stage when this was happening, and literally, folks got on the mic and said, this person is being thrown out of the nightclub for using the women's bathroom, and the entire club got up and left the nightclub. Wow. And started chanting in the streets about, Black Lives Matter, Black trans lives matter, and completely and totally, the party, we had an hour left to party, and folks were like, we're done, and left the nightclub, and then started to then hold this nightclub accountable for this. So with this said, the next day, folks did talk about not only this incident, but what were the ways that the conference had not really thought about. And so there was, as they would say, an impact statement where trans people got up on the stage to then talk about what were things. And one of the things that came up was, the bathrooms are gendered. And so, something that is so simple in the movement that lots of us at this point have non-gendered bathrooms. We have them at our conference. We have them in our office right now, that no one is policed when they go to the bathroom. We had kind of forgotten this. So I'll just share this, because what was awesome for me was being at the Freedom School. Again, I missed everything. I was at the Freedom School. And so some adults were really freaked out, because all of a sudden one day the bathrooms were gendered, and now they had signs that said all gendered bathrooms. We're in a whole other space. This is a big university. And there were adults that were like, what do we do? We don't know what to do. But the young people were like, this is great. And there were particularly young girls, young female-identified girls that were like, I want to see what the boys' bathroom looks like. So we went into the boys' bathroom. I went in, I escorted them in and said, let's check out the boys' bathroom. Let's see. And it became wonderful. We all talked about wonderful discussions with children about why are we policing the bathrooms? And it was do they look different? And then even one girl had to flush all the urals and just she had to do that to then say why am I being policed? Why is this happening? And it was just an awesome sort of experience to be able to talk about, that around trans identity, but just in general about, why can't we just use bathrooms? Why can't we just use it in the most private, involuntary act? Why are we policed? threatened, attacked, beaten, humiliated to use a bathroom. Shouldn't that just be a right for everybody to be able to safely use a bathroom and not even have to think about it? Okay, big incident. I'm sure that everyone knows. At the very end of the closing minute of the conference, of the convening of the conference, there was a police attack. It was just, and it was so, I mean, like the LA bus had driven off, the Harlem bus was gone, like it was seemed very like interesting that we didn't see cops, really. And all of a sudden, at the very end of this, there was a 14-year-old who supposedly maybe had an open container, we don't really know. But it was a young person walking down the street, doing their thing, I don't think was affiliated with the conference, and all of a sudden, there was the police not only arrested this young person and he was put in the back of a car, but when anyone went up and said, what happened? What happened? They were pepper sprayed. Literally, what happened? Excuse me, officer, what happened? Shh, happened. And people even, there were people in this building that were there, different folks that have talked about whether or not, how many times people were pepper sprayed, but I had friends that were buying like water on their way back to New York, and all of a sudden it's like, we need milk. Like, so people then became, in 2 seconds, protest ready. And people took the streets, I see my time is over, people took the streets and surrounded, like the cop cars started coming in, and people created a human chain, and like, locked down the streets. Completely locked down the streets. And literally, like, I'm just gonna use Teresa, like, just formed a human chain, and like, it was just like national. Like, it didn't matter, like, I don't know you, but we're gonna lock arms and we're in this together. And was like, the ambulance, so what happened was that I think the young person was also pepper sprayed, and they were like demanding medical attention. So I've said, like, people cop watch, people had their cameras out, people were trying to do, lawyers jumped up, people with no legal experience jumped up, people with no medical experience became medics, street medics. It was just like that. People then went and demanded that the mother come down. Mom got called. Somehow we got mom down there. Mom got down there. And when mom, and people fought so hard to the point that we got the young person released into his mother's custody, no charges, unarrested him from the state, because folks were just like not gonna go down. And I'll just share with this. There are stories that might be legendary of people that were already at the airport who turned back around, missed their flights to come back because they heard our people were being pepper sprayed. I was on the Brooklyn bus, and we had a whole situation around lost luggage of a sister friend of mine. And literally, you know, we went flying down the street when we heard about the pepper spray, but the Harlem bus had already left. And the Harlem bus, with mad respect to the folks that were on the bus, had already determined that they were going to figure out if they were going to Uber all the way back, because some people were not going to leave while they heard that the pepper spray was happening. So then they got consensus, because I got a call from about, and folks really literally was like, okay, it seems that we don't need to come down, but we're not going to leave without you. And so people then took over. We, as New York activists, there was over, I would say there was probably a good 75 of us, probably over 75 people, took over the parking lot of this rest stop and chanted and sang and cried and all whatever people needed to do in that moment, but were really, really clear and sort of unified about the fact that when our people are under attack, we have each other's back. And in a way that was really, really like cementing. There were folks that like had never worked with each other before. There were folks from different, again, the DR people. Like, it was just a moment where people, I think that was what was important about it, was really about that one of the things that I think the Black Lives Matter movement has done, particularly for this particular age group in the generation, is really allow people to say, even if we're working in cyberspace, isolated from each other in different cities, no matter what, people really have a sense of that they belong to a larger movement. And I think that that is a really important thing. Seeing the ruling class does everything they do to isolate young people and have young people feel like they're not part of society and not part of, like, you know, as a class in general, feelings like, you know, lack of jobs, lack of health care. There were young folks there, you know, I can't tell you about how many GoFund pages just to get people to go, how many folks were unemployed, and that was part of the reason they could go. But I think the piece was the importance of how this movement really is like, no matter what the ruling class will do, folks were like, we will create this movement. No matter how many times you put people in jail, we will be part of this movement. We will continue to be in the streets. I think that's really it. I hope that there'll be other forms of discussion. I hope other people saw other parts of the videotape. I do want to say one last thing. A very impromptu thing happened is there is a slogan called we're gonna be all right. It's out of Kendrick Lamar's song, All Right. I encourage people to listen to the song because it's now defining, like it really literally, the song is about police brutality to some degree, but it's become this impromptu kind of like spontaneous anthem of this movement. And I think it's kind of badass. I love Kendrick Lamar. He's 25 years old, African American man, out of Compton. We're gonna be all right.
So much for me, Imani.
I don't know. You tell me.
No, but I thought you had to leave it.
Oh, I do. I have to go up to the mountains. So tell me, what time is it right now?
It's 5 to 8. So you have 5 minutes?
Sure. No, we can. You all can keep talking.
No, I'm saying for questions.
Sure, you can have. Yeah, sure. I have a little more time than that.
Thank you very much. That was excellent. Imani has to go somewhere, so
I gotta go to
take
work.
a few minutes of questions or comments about the conference, and then we'll go on. So be thinking now about any question or comment you have for Imani, because he has to run shortly. And while you're thinking of your question or comment, Monica pointed out that the article written by Carmen Lamont from North Carolina on the conference will be online tonight, and we urge you to look at that. It's supposed to be excellent. He usually writes excellent, so I'm sure it is. So that'll be over the, be sure to read it over the weekend.
And he actually went to things.
Yeah, he was there with them.